Drinking with Authors may contain adult content. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, I am Nick Savage, hosting Drinking with Authors tonight. I am your normal author artist. Some may call me a idiot savant. As always, Four Horsemen Publications is the sponsor of tonight's broadcast, and I have with us tonight author Amy L. Bernstein, and I have been practicing that last name, and if I said it wrong, blame my coordinating producer who said this is how you say it. She is an award-winning fiction and nonfiction author who lets readers feel while making them think. As the author of 6 novels and a book of inspiration for creators called Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Amy brings a compassionate and insightful voice to writers' conferences around the country. As a former journalist, I can speak. I haven't even started drinking yet. Amy also works as a book coach, helping nonfiction authors craft compelling book proposals. Her new novel, Tent City, explores the decline of the American dream and its impact on one family in particular. And before we get to that, Amy, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, Nick, tonight I am drinking a lovely French white wine from the Gascony region. I have not been to that region in France, but it's really nice and sort of nice, cool mineral on the palate, and very crisp and fresh, and a great way to bring spring in.
See, I like the way that you say very specific details on wine. I've actually taken wine classes on how to properly identify notes in wine. I am drinking a Paso Robles Paso 46, and it tastes like alcoholic grapes. That's all wine ever tastes like to me. I have no palate for that stuff. Now you said yours is a white wine. Is it like a Chardonnay or a Riesling, or is it just?
Yes, it's very close to a Chardonnay, and I'm not an expert enough to be able to say what the grape is, because the bottle, I actually studied it before we're getting on here tonight. The bottle just tells you that it's from Gascony or Gascogne, but it doesn't tell you details. Sometimes they actually tell you the grape, and I don't actually know. But yes, let's put it this way: it drinks like a Chardonnay.
If it drinks like a Chardonnay and it doesn't say, it might be a blend with a heavy Chardonnay input in it. Mm-hmm. These are only things I know from having taken those wine classes before. But again, if I drank it, I'd be like, Welch's. But that's just me. I love a good wine, but I can't tell you anything about them. But speaking of things to tell about, Tent City, give us some more details on that besides the decline of the American dream.
Right. So what a wild book this turns out to be. So this is a story about steep economic decline in a small town, and how one family in particular ends up turning their vast backyard into home to a sea of tents of people who become unemployed, unhoused, and pretty desperate. So everything starts out kind of normally, and goes to hell in a handbasket. And the book it's pretty harrowing. It gets pretty dark. It's kind of sad. It's kind of realistic. And people might be thinking, well, I don't need any more bummer in my life. But I got to tell you, everybody needs to read a sad book now and again, because it actually makes you feel in interesting ways okay about your life, and it gets you thinking about how things are and how they could be. And it's a pretty intense read for given what these characters go through. But I say, best sad book of the year. And if you're getting tired of the steady diet of romantasy and cozy crime, you got to cleanse your palate and read something dark.
Well, I actually really like that, because the books I write are very rooted in this almost ultra realism type stuff. So they're not your feel good, books of the moment. And I like the fact that your book is very much like that, in that kind of, I don't want to necessarily say tearjerker, but in that harsh reality of it.
I don't know if it's a tearjerker. Oh, I mean, actually, I would, if people cry, I've done my job. If you can write a book that makes people cry, that is the best thing in the world. But I will say that it makes you ask questions like, how would I behave in these circumstances? How would I treat my neighbor? How would I treat my family if we were all sort of just losing everything that we thought, we could depend on, the whole American dream and, upward mobility and all those things. It's kind of fallen by the wayside in this book. And you don't always know why, but you can see the effects. And that's what's so chilling, I think, about the story.
Now, have you heard of, and if you did you include it in some sort of inspiration for the story of Tent City? But have you ever heard of Slab City in California?
No, but it sounds kind of dire.
Slab City in and of itself is kind of the last bastion of both hope and freedom for a lot of people, where it's a lot of people who can't get up from down on their luck or have fallen on, hard times go, and they kind of live off the grid, literally and figuratively. No real power outside of generators, no law. It's kind of on the outskirts of any, or not even outskirts, offskirts of any town or anything like that. And well, your book is, dystopian. There's, Slab City is very real. So it, as much as a lot of books that are dystopian are futuristic and stuff like that, I'm finding that the more we try to write futuristic things, the more they're not as far off in the future as we'd like.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And in fact, someone who read the book, who's an expert in the housing and the homelessness industry, she said, this is actually this is like real. This is happening. People are sort of falling out of the economy and finding themselves like living in, tents. And of course, we're all aware that that's a problem in many communities. But of course, the book just blows it up, right, to be a really big, major thing. And there's a lot of reality in this book, even though, I love, because I was a journalist, so I love bringing a sense of researched reality into what's still a fictional world and fictional characters, and kind of playing around with that, because I think it makes a very kind of compelling mix where, well, this feels like this could be happening, even though it's not actually happening. And then in some ways it really is happening. So it's right on the line there, which I think is a fun place to be for fiction.
No, and that's wonderful, and I think the realism, even in the fiction, is that most of us are 2 months away from being homeless, 2 bad months away from being homeless, and those same people are never 2 months away from being a millionaire. So the dystopia of it all is a little more, real. And I like that, not that we're 2 months away from being homeless in any 2 bad months, but the realism of it all.
Yeah.
So when you write, now being a nonfiction writer, you, not me, there, I'm assuming is a lot of planning and research that goes into it, because you can't just make stuff up like some authors do with fiction. Do you find that sort of planning goes into your fiction as well?
Oh, absolutely. I plan all my books. I don't want to say meticulously, but pretty carefully. But I do it for a couple of different reasons. On the one hand, I find myself always researching things so that I can bring in like that note of reality. Like I went so far, I was writing a book that took place in a fictional town in Western Maryland. This was a different book. And I wanted to make sure I knew what kind of trees would grow in that part of the state. So I was looking up, so I could because I didn't want someone to come to me and say, that tree would never grow there. I don't believe in your book. You don't want to dispel the trust that you build with the reader. So I do a lot of research, and that requires planning. But I also do research. I also do planning because I really believe in the power of structure in a book, and how do you build momentum from scene to scene, and how do you make sure that the story is really moving along in a compelling way. And I find that you can write in the moment, that's great, but at some point you really have to plan things so that you can get a sense of the pacing, and the seeds that you plant early, come home to roost later, and that takes planning. You can't do all that spontaneously.
I agree. I think that not all the time, but sometimes with the pantsers, the writers who just go out there and write and don't have any ideas in mind, sometimes you read this and you go, yeah, they didn't know what they were going to write next, and they're making it up without any planning. You know what I'm saying? And the plotters always have a little more structure to their books. And I'm not saying all the time, but I definitely think that like you said, plotting it and planning it really has more benefits than trying to wing it.
Well, and if you want to race through a first draft of a novel or sketchy first draft that's just driven by your passion for your story, I mean, have at it. But what you have to realize is, can you tell that I'm a book coach? I coach a lot of writers, and I teach a lot of writing courses. What you have to realize is that you have to come back at some point and really impose a structure and a discipline on that story, because the thing that keeps readers turning pages is the sense of pacing and momentum and character development, and that we're coming to particular tent poles in a story where we've got action happening and twists, and this all has to be planned and timed out, and you cannot do all that spontaneously after a certain point.
I think, I mean, I agree 100% on that. As a writer, are you familiar with the oh, and now his name is, this is what happens when I start drinking, people's names. I want to say it's Zack Snyder's Beat Sheets.
Oh, I'm sure I've heard of it. I haven't read the book, but
it's
yeah.
It's
not in a book form.
No. It's actually, if I go to, I'm going to savethecat.com right now to check out the beat mapper.
Beat sheets,
but like
right.
his beat sheets are like where, this page, the opening image happens on this page, the theme of the book or the theme of the story is stated. Then you have the setup, the catalyst, debate, you're breaking act 2 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And writers who understand the craft, whether they plan or they don't, plot, the story will eventually hit all those notes anyways and hit all those beats. But the idea of having it happen on certain, within a certain page is where, like you said, your tent poles fall into place. Right. And it's where the readers know, because if it's dragging, the reader might not know why it's dragging, but they know it's dragging. Right. And whatever that reason is, if it drags too long, you lose the reader. And so you don't want to do that. So the Zack Snyder's beats, that kind of, the formula of books and movies is there for a reason, and it's to keep the reader or the viewer or whoever engaged in it. And it's funny because you can take any book, I've done it with my books, and you just say, all right, it's this many pages, and it'll say, well, on this page, this should happen, on this page, this should happen, and you go, oh, I was off by, 5 pages or 30 pages or whatever, but then the rest happened on this. And if you do that, especially like you were saying with your first draft, if they just want to write from that place of passion before they go in and fix it, they have that structure then at that point.
I think different tools work for different writers. I've never used a beat sheet document in my life, and I've written 6 novels. And I think that, first of all, as a lifelong reader, I've just somehow internalized what it should feel like. And so, and particularly once you get an editor involved, they help you make sure that you're doing those things. I just kind of figure out at some point where it's dragging or where I need to really kind of propel the action, or we need more here, or it's not developing. I mean, I can begin to see it. So I don't use those tools. And I think some writers do find them incredibly helpful. I think it also depends on where you are in your process with the draft when you bring something like that in, because it can be stifling if you bring it in too early. And it can be frustrating if you bring it in too late.
Yes.
So it just depends. And I just believe that for every writer, there's a tool that works and there's a tool that doesn't. And I tend to teach some different orientations to developing structure than the beat sheet mode. But again, it really depends on what works for different writers. I wouldn't want to lock a writer into artificially feeling that on page 8, this has to happen, and on page 17, this has to happen. I mean, it could stifle the creativity and the development of the story and the characters and get you very self-conscious. But I also heard there's an author who said that something should happen, something important has to happen every 7 pages. And I thought, wow, that's aggressive. Okay, that's one way.
That is a very kind of aggressive approach to it. And if you think back through all 6 books you've written and all the ones I've wrote, I don't know if that happens like that. And when they say something, important or wild or whatever the word you used was, because I'm drinking and I already forgot that one word. It makes sense though, but it also makes sense in that it should naturally happen, because when you're writing, every word you write should advance the story and not be superfluous. So then it would make sense that every 7 or every 10 or every 5 pages, something is happening on a level that's pushing the story forward and not just exposition.
Right. But I also believe that pushing the story forward has got to come, it's got to be rooted in the protagonist's own needs and wants and their motivation. What does this character need? What do they want? What gets in their way? And how do they get it? And
Yes.
so that is what propels so much of what goes on. And so if you're going to impose it externally, it's going to function as a device rather than feeling that it's coming from the character. I just finished reading Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary, which of course is now a major motion picture. But I can't wait to see the movie because I have just read the book and I love seeing the difference between the book and the movie. But the structure of that book is so interesting because while he does have some character development, it's so story driven and the science drives the story. Even the science functions like a character making things happen, even almost more or on a par with the main character himself. And it's an interesting structure. And I think there's some interesting, there are pros and cons to what he did and how he did it. Obviously, I can't argue with his success, but I think but in terms of craft, you could argue about what he did and why he did it and what works and what might even not work that well. And it's a fascinating example of, story, character, plot, what's driving things forward and all those things.
I think being able to dissect something that has such success, or even books that don't have such success, or movies, and dissecting them to see what works well and what doesn't, is what drives creatives to be more creative and to be better at their craft. It's an appreciation of sorts, and an objective look at the craft instead of a subjective look at the craft. And I think that a lot of people have lost that perspective to differentiate between the two. And they're like, well, if I like it, it's good. And if I don't like it, it's bad. And I'm like, that's not how objective and subjective work. Right. So I 100% agree with you that we can look at his work, or you can take a look at anyone's work, whether it's, Sarah J. Maas, J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, Dalton Trumbo, and dissect their work to see what worked well for the time and what didn't, and stuff like that, and do that. And I think that's wonderful, and something we should all be doing with our own work. Now, you go to writers' conferences and do what you do there. Are these writers' conferences that like reach out to you and they're like, hey, come on down and do this? Or are you kind of...
That's the world, Nick, that I'm going to live in someday when they all come after me. But what I've done is, well, I mean, it's happened a little bit, but what I really do is basically I pitch myself at the right time to some of the bigger writers' conferences, and I say, hey, here's what I can offer. And it's turned out, pretty well. In fact, I'm going to be very busy at the Atlanta Writers Conference, May 1 and 2, delivering a whole bunch of workshops there, both long and short. And people are welcome to sign up for that and come down. It's a great conference, and it's chock full of opportunities for writers and craft. But I so love connecting with writers. I've done it at so many different places now, and it's just a joy to find that community and to really spark those conversations and discussions. All of us, we're so introverted and we do our thing alone, but then when we come together, we get very excited about being together. And I also love the act of sharing and teaching craft, so that we all have these aha moments together about how we write and how we do what we do. It's just a tremendously wonderful experience, which is one reason I love doing it so much.
So I have a question for you, and this one's kind of deep and has to deal with teaching the craft of writing and everything like that. We've all met authors, writers who have an idea that like something struck them. They're like, oh, I'm building a story because I had a funny idea for a scene happen in my head. How do you go about telling a writer that the idea they had that they're trying to turn into a story isn't so much a story as it is a scene that they should save for when they have a story?
Yeah, well, now you're getting into the sort of the art of book coaching as well, which is, coaching is an opportunity to help a writer have a different perspective on their own work and their own intentions, and to help them ask all the best what if questions so that they can shift their perspective and maybe make that work or that idea better. So I mean, I've seen so much work and so many manuscripts where I can see what the writer is trying to accomplish, but they didn't achieve it with respect to connecting to the reader. And it's my job to articulate why, what isn't working and why not, and help them see what you probably need to do is X or go in this direction. I'll never tell somebody how to write something. What I do is I try and help an author see their own work in a clearer perspective and help them discover their own way forward. So I think there really are ways of having those conversations. I have lots of them.
I want you to know that everything you just said about coaching an author and writing is what therapists do with their patients.
Yes, it's like, I think it is like there. I think it is like therapy. I think it is. I had a podcast host tell me, I think we just did therapy. Yes.
It is. It's very much, because a good therapist will never tell you how to live your life or how to do things.
Exactly.
But they will give you the tools to make better choices with your life so you can find a way to live. You know what I'm saying? And,
yep.
And
that's you're doing so well put.
Doing the exact same thing. So yeah, it's all just book therapy. And
this is the reason, Nick, why I always tell writers, especially aspiring writers, don't depend on your friends and your relatives to give you feedback, because they're not going to give you, like, the therapist is a professional, right? They have a vocabulary, a certain way of talking with you and seeing you in a certain perspective. Your friends and your family, they don't have that perspective on you for this purpose. They're not going to give you that level of feedback that you need, that's constructive in writer speak. They're just going to go, oh, that's nice. Oh, I like that. Or, I'm not sure, I'm not really sure. Like, they can't tell you why.
You're 100% right. And most, I'm lucky and unlucky in that same sense, because growing up, everybody's always told by their family, you're great, you're doing a good job, even if you're not, because they want to encourage you. And they're not doing that and encouraging people with the ill intent. My dad was always the guy who looked at things and gave the encouragement and then 5 points of critique. And it was nice because it bred someone in me that wanted to always do better, but it also bred a very paranoid person who thinks that people only give me the reviews I get online and only keep buying my books because they want to, like, make me feel like I'm doing a good job. And writers, people in general, can't separate family from people who just genuinely like your stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Your Doubt Monster is talking to you, because that's, the book that came out last year is Wrangling the Doubt Monster. And that's where I talk all about how to recognize doubt as a creative person and what it does to us and how we can live with it and sort of be creative despite, our doubts. And it's a whole exploration of that. And you're articulating a clear facet of the Doubt Monster. Yeah.
It 100% is. And it's funny because I know my wife has beaten it into me that at the end of the day, these people who buy my books, who don't know who I am and continue to buy the books, and these people who buy my books at shows aren't just going to hand me money because they think I'm a cool person. There's no reason for that. They're going to buy something because they like it and they want to continue liking the work that you do. And when they don't, they're going to stop. And so it's like when people ask me about my books and ask me about the craft of writing, I can talk because I know I'm good at what I do in theory. But then when it actually comes down to, like, here are my books, I'm like, they're books. I write, you know what I'm saying? So it is. But the Doubt Monster, tell me about that book, because this sounds like something I need to buy. So
Wrangling the Doubt Monster is the little book that every self-doubting creative person needs to read and keep. People are literally keeping it either next to their computer or on their nightstand. They tell me this. And it's the kind of book that you can dip out in and out of on any page, because the whole book is meant to articulate what self-doubt feels like and how we can live with it. It's not really a book of guidance. It's very much a book of inspiration and helping a creative person feel seen and understood in ways that we don't do enough. And one of my goals in writing this book was to basically excavate my own lifelong struggles with self-doubt, which have held me back so many times over so many years. And also to begin to normalize conversations around this topic, because it's a place of deep vulnerability, and we creatives are already kind of vulnerable. And it's so therapeutic, there's that word again, but it's so helpful to realize you are not alone in feeling this way. And the more I've had conversations with people about this literally all over the world, and it's such a universal phenomenon around creative people, around artists. And the more we talk about it, the more we can recognize it in one another, which really helps us begin to come to terms with how to walk with self-doubt and not let it beat you down and not let it be the only tape that's playing in your head. So this book is that tool to just help you feel more normal around your self-doubts.
After this, I am going onto Amazon and finding that book.
There you go.
That sounds wonderful. So thank you for that. My coordinating producer sent me the info, you know what I'm saying, on you. 6 books, some nonfiction, some fiction. Are you with a publisher or are you self-published?
Oh, that's a great question. It's actually 7. It's actually 7 books. I have one coming out next year. I just wrote a piece about this too. I've written 5 books that have been placed with 5 different traditional publishers, plus I've self-published 2. So I have been down the road. I do not have an agent, but I keep finding publishers who really want my work. And this raises so many questions for people, like, why do you have 5 publishers for 5 books? Why couldn't you stay with one publisher? And, this gets into the mechanics of what publishing is like today. And, for smaller publishers, smaller traditional publishers, they'll take you on and they take your book. And honestly, you're kind of on a conveyor belt. And by the time your book is out and, sort of muddling along or whatever, they're on to the next season or the season after that or the season after that. And they don't automatically, they're not in the business always of developing the author over a career. They're in the business of finding the books that they think they could sell now. So you don't always get a second bite at the apple, and you're not always invited to. And also, I found that different books, because I've written in so many different genres, different books need different homes. So the publisher that published my paranormal romance, all they publish is romance. So they're not going to take my mystery thriller that a different publisher took. And my nonfiction book went to a different publisher from that, because he takes a chance on interesting different material like Wrangling the Doubt Monster. And it sort of goes on and on. And so I've had a very kind of weird, bizarre publishing history. And I've learned, what I can say is I have learned so much from this unintended road. Would I have liked to have landed an agent and just grown my own author brand with one agent who kept placing my work? Sure, would have loved it. But it didn't happen.
No. That is perfect. Now, with these published, I understand that I have like 8 thoughts going through my head right now, so I'm trying to like narrow it down on how to start. A lot of people, when they start writing and want to get that book out there, they do their research and they're like, oh, in order to get a publisher, you have to have an agent. So then they query the agents. Did you have to like properly with the query letter query these publishers, or do they come up to you?
So the way it works is you query a publisher who is open to submissions, just the way you will query an agent. The gatekeeping is a little bit different, but not a lot different. Some publishers will ask you for a full manuscript right from the get-go with the query letter or the query form. Some publishers will ask you for the first 50 pages. So some publishers will ask you only for a query, and then they'll decide whether they want to request more from you. So just as the literary agents each have their own ways of doing it, there's a couple standard ways, but they do have variations. Publishers often also have variations. The advantages of pitching to a small traditional press or smaller traditional press is that a lot of the smaller presses are taking chances on material that the agents won't touch, because the agents increasingly, and again, bit of a blanket statement, but also true, the agents increasingly can only place a bet on a potentially very commercial book that's going to sell a lot of copies, because they can only sell through to mostly the big 5 publishers or the biggest publishers who are looking for commercial winners. And so if you have written a really wonderful, quirky little book, as I do, that doesn't fit there. I mean, not all my books are quirky, but some. That's just not going to be agent material for the most part. So the smaller publishers will take a chance on a wider range of material. And a lot of the publishers have much more generous submission windows than the agents. Some agents are going to only be open for a couple weeks out of an entire year, or a couple months at most. That's true for some publishers, but many publishers have very long open submission windows. Some open all the time, or just for longer periods of time, so you can get your material in there.
Do you have, when I was looking for a publisher and I settled, was found, I don't want to say settled, like it was like, oh, I'll go with them. When I found my home with my publisher, it was very happenstance and stuff like that. So I didn't have to do a lot of query letter writing, which was great because, as every author knows, writing query letters, which is like a one-page letter, is harder than writing a 90,000 word manuscript. What advice do you have on writing a query letter that's not going to get rejected?
All right. So, warning, I feel really strongly about this. Let me just get that up front, because when I go into this little diatribe, you will already know that I feel strongly. I think that what many rising and aspiring and emerging writers don't quite understand is that the query letter has been built up to be something that it is not. It is a short, concise sales tool. Many agents will barely skim, or even a publisher, they'll barely skim the query. They'll go to your synopsis and they'll go to your first pages, and they'll decide whether there's anything they want to read. Then they might return to the query. The perception that the query is somehow the thing that opens the doors, like the query is like the open sesame, that is not factually accurate. So your query letter can be 3 simple paragraphs: who you are in the book and the genre and the word count, one paragraph that really gets to not what the book is about, but kind of what does the book really mean? Like what does the book really add up to that's going to intrigue me and make me lean in and want to learn more? Don't give me all the plot points. And then a short paragraph about kind of who you are and why you wrote it. Like, it's just not this the perception that if I write a great query letter, I will get an agent and my book will become sold and successful. That does not track. Those dots do not connect. So I don't think authors should be belaboring the query quite to the extent that they are. What they should be focusing on is, have you paid to have an editor scrutinize your manuscript first so it's in the very best shape it can be? Are your first 10 pages absolutely stellar so the agent wants to read more? Do you have a really great handle on what your genre really is and who you're really writing for? You need to nail all that down long before you think about your 3-paragraph query letter.
You touch on something that I tell people all the time, because when I'm at like a signing or an event or whatever you want to call them, I'll get aspiring writers come up to me and be like, why should I pay an editor to edit my stuff if a publishing house is just going to do that anyways when I'm looking to get it published? And I tell them it like this: you want to put your best foot forward. And if you show up to it, because a query letter and then submitting your manuscript is a job interview for that. You're not going to show up to a job interview in your pajamas and uncombed hair, not that I have any to comb, and unbrushed teeth and stuff like that. You're going to show up looking your finest. And then as you have your job, you show up a little less and less each day until you quit. But the manuscript needs to be edited because you need to put your best foot forward. Yeah, they're going to go through it and they're going to edit it. You know what I'm saying? But that, you said something that reinforces what I say all the time. And people just don't want to grasp it. They don't want to learn.
Well, I think they don't understand how extraordinarily competitive this industry is. It's ridiculously competitive. The funnel is very, very narrow. So if your book is not grabbing somebody from the get-go and is not super clear on its premise and sort of what it's really about, and you haven't put it through that editorial ringer to really perfect every line, every sentence, every word, you're simply decreasing your chances of being competitive, and somebody else is going to get in there ahead of you. So you shouldn't, don't think ahead to what some publishers editorial staff will or will not do to your manuscript. That's several steps ahead of where you are. You need to get past the gatekeepers first, and you need to be in great shape to do that. Can I tell a quick query story?
Please, yes, please.
So publishers, when you're submitting directly, they take a query letter too. It can be the exact same query letter you sent to an agent. The point is, it's that short sales document that lets them get a window onto your book in an interesting, intriguing, fun, dynamic way really quickly. And so I was teaching at a writers conference almost a year and a half ago now. And I was really busy doing teaching things, and I wasn't going to pitch, but I could pitch for free to one. And I had this manuscript that I had not been able to sell, and I was feeling heartbroken about it because I believed in the book. And I decided, oh, what the heck, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to pitch this publisher. I'm not going to pitch an agent. I'm going to pitch this publisher, because I think you want to make sure that your material is a good match. And I thought that my material was a good match for their sensibility and the kind of wild stuff that they take a chance on. So I sat down with my phone. I called up my original query letter. I sort of cut it down, rearranged it a little bit, and I went to the table to the publisher. And I was not ashamed of this. I held up the phone and I performed my query letter, which is to say, I didn't just like read it in a monotone. I read it like I really believed it. I just read the query, and which sort of told this humorous story about this sort of wild and crazy world in which men get pregnant, and what happens when the money follows them and gives them every opportunity in the world to get cured. There's a lot going on in that book, and that book's coming out with this publisher next year. So if you've written a tight query that's true to the feel of the book, and you believe in it, and you can get behind it, whether you're pitching it on paper or you're pitching it orally, as I did, that's going to resonate with somebody. And that's what you need. That's what you want to be focused on. I've taught query letter classes, and one of the mistakes that authors make all the time, they get so tangled up in trying to give me every plot point about the book, and the query letter is not about the plot.
No.
Query letters, what's the feeling? What feeling is this book going to engender? What are the questions? What's the central conflict? And maybe give you a hint about how it gets resolved. You're looking at much bigger picture issues than this happens, then this happens, then this happens. That's just not what goes to the query letter.
Authors, so if I can try to sum up, authors are focusing too much on the fine details of their books when writing queries, and not the broad strokes.
That's right. The fun broad strokes,
The fun broad strokes. Right. Fun being the important word, right?
You and I both know there's a formula. It's when such and such, then blah 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 blah, and because of that, so and so must, and in the end, they. So yeah. That forces you. You can't tell your plot. You can't describe your whole plot. It forces you to focus on the tent poles in the book. What's the big thing that happens, and what's the consequence?
Yeah, no, the blurbs are hard for some people to write, in the synopsis, which is basically just a blurb. And I actually, little funny side note before I ask you one last question. I got back a manuscript today. I was waiting on edits from my editor, and the blurb was in there. It's always at the front when it goes to my publisher's editor. I had lost track of the blurb while I was writing it, and even made a note that says I lost my spot. And I had to fix it. And she was like, yeah, you totally lost track of the blurb right here. But it's true. You have to be able to focus an entire, in this case, 53,000 word manuscript down to 3 paragraphs and do it succinctly, hitting on the fun tent poles that move the story forward. And it sometimes you need an editor just for the synopsis or the blurb, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. And let me say that for most of my books, and certainly for Tent City, the book that just came out this last week, I worked really hard on my own mini synopsis, my own book jacket copy, my own log line, which is like a teaser, right? I wrote all that myself, and the book and the editors, the publisher, took all that. And I'm like, thank goodness I worked so hard on it, because it works. And I think every writer should try to develop that skill on their own. It's true, some of us need more help than others, but it's an important skill not to overlook, because it'll take you very far. You'll use it a lot.
I think one of the best things that happened to me with writing was my friend, also named Nick, became me and him soundboard off each other. So I'd present him with an idea, and he'd be like, well, what if we do this? What if this happens? Why? And he'd always ask why and why and why. And writers, especially new writers, when people ask them why does this happen? Why does this happen? What about this? They feel like it's an attack. Like, oh, they're picking apart my work and trying to make it not make sense, and make me feel like, and this could be the paranoid version of me wrangling with the doubt monster. But a lot of writers feel like when people ask the whys, they're trying to pick apart their work and go, ha, you're not a real writer. When really they're just trying to make sure you understand your own writing.
Yes.
And when I reframed my thinking from he's trying to make me feel like a piece of shit to he's trying to make me a better writer,
right,
it opened up a whole new world. And I love working with him. Don't get me wrong, me and him will yell at each other sometimes.
right.
One of us is high or drunk at the moment when we're doing it, and it's fun.
Right.
It's legal now. But it's one of those things where it's fun to do and to get to that point and stuff. And what I was saying was getting somewhere, but I've been drinking with authors.
I think you're saying every writer needs an editor, period. That is what you're saying.
That is totally what I'm saying, is every writer needs an editor for everything they do, not just their manuscript, but their blurb and their blog, because it's fun. Thank you. Oh, me and you could be sounding boards for each other. So before we wrap it up, I have to ask you a question, because you said white wine in the little fun info stuff, white wine. Do you just not like red wine?
Red wine doesn't like me. My body reacts so differently to red wine than to white wine. And the truth is, the longer I've stayed away from red, the stronger that reaction is when I occasionally try to have some. So it's different chemical signatures somehow. It's just different. So I love wine, but I can tolerate white better than I can tolerate red. Red wine's wonderful. My husband drinks red almost all the time. I drink white all the time, but it's a body chemistry thing.
No. I completely understand. I actually can only drink very specific alcohols, and I never remember which ones they are. I have blood sugar issues, so it's a whole thing. But I'll still drink stuff anyways, just for fun. But this one I'm actually okay with. It's making me a little tipsy, but it's not affecting me. But like white, I don't like sweet wines.
No, I don't either at all.
Okay, give me dry.
Only dry.
Dry and full bodied. Okay. And to me, dry full bodied reds hit and are a little easier to find than dry full bodied whites. So I have homework for you from now on. If you find dry full bodied white wines, you must email me.
Okay.
The name of the vineyard and the name of the wine, so I can expand my palate.
Well, because I will tell you that try to find some if you find some whites from the white Burgundy from the Burgundy region of France, it's worth spending about $25 to get there, and you'll find a really wonderful dry, full-bodied, complex white wine from Burgundy.
Okay, so Burgundy white wines about $25 a bottle. Right. That's not bad.
And the Russian River whites from California are just superb. Also a lot of them full body.
Russian River whites from California.
Okay. Right. It's it'll say Russian River on a lot of the labels, because it's just like an extraordinary region for that kind of rich complexity.
Wonderful. Now you can't drink red because health issues, and no judgment there, because trust, I understand. But your husband, if he's ever looking, because I can't talk about white wines, I know nothing about them anymore.
Tell me.
Carmenères. They are a Chilean wine.
Okay.
That is they tend to be more medium to full bodied, dry to less dry, but they're never overly sweet by any means. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Carmenères are a Chilean spiced wine. Now, when I say spiced, I don't mean like spicy, like Tabasco pepper spicy.
I know what you mean.
And they are probably some of the best wines I've ever drinking in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You will never drink them, because whatever affects you will probably kill you with these wines. So don't try them.
I hope not.
But they are probably some of my all-time favorite wines. And if your husband's never tried them, have him look for one. Honestly, you don't even need to spend $20. Like, I've had $20 bottles that I've loved and hated. I've had $6 bottles that I've loved and hated.
Right.
Carmenères. It's just kind of go to a good liquor store, where the people actually get paid to know their stuff. Yep. And ask them, and they will be able to tell you on those wines. But I'm honestly, outside of red wines, more of like a Scotch guy?
Yep, as is my husband, but I can't tolerate any of the grains. I can only drink the grapes. So I have a very narrow tolerance for alcohol. So yeah.
So you're like white wine is like all you can drink.
And everything else disagrees with me. I don't even drink limoncello anymore. Yeah, pretty much.
The migraines I will get from limoncello are
Mhm.
almost not worth it. And I'm
Right.
not even talking a lot, like a little,
Right.
like half shot of limoncello
Right.
will put me out for a day. I will still drink a good 4 or 5 shots, like slowly, because I just love the flavor. It's one of the few
Yeah.
lemon
Yeah.
flavors that I will
Yeah.
go to.
Yeah.
But I will get so ungodly sick from it, but I don't care.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am 100% with you on that. You have been so much fun. I need to have you tell us everything about where to find your books, your socials, everything about all 5 of your publishers. I need you to, and don't rush through it. Take your time. I just talk fast. Give us everything on the shameless self-promotion that you want to get out.
Well, all you have to do is just go to my website. It's amywrites.live, AMYWRITES.live. And you'll find more than you want to know about me and access to just about everything. And I'll tell you something interesting. Ordering direct from my publisher for 10th City in particular is a far better bet than Amazon. Amazon takes such a huge bite out of the author's cut and the publisher's cut. And I don't expect readers to know that, but when you really begin to see the difference, if you buy from the publisher, they do better, the author does better, and we don't need to give Amazon all of our money.
And there are those people who are like, but I trust Amazon, and I order from Amazon all the time. It's just sometimes you do what you do. But there are readers that come to me that are like, if I order from your publisher site, will it get you? Yes. Yeah. And supporting the publishers, Amazon makes enough money. They don't need an extra dollar from my.
But they're taking it.
They're taking it. Yeah. So it is always from the publisher, amywrites.live, and everything they can find about you for your social medias and stuff are all right there.
All there. It's all there.
And your publisher info, publishers is multiple.
Books are all there. It's all there. It's all there.
It's there. The 10th City just came out, so they can find that and order that now.
Yes.
And can you tell us the name of the book coming out next year? Or is that not available yet?
It's called Seed, SEED, and it is not available yet. I don't even have a cover. We're a long way from that part of the production line. I'm incredibly excited about it. It's going to be controversial. I hope somebody decides to ban it. I'm just waiting for it. So, it's about men and abortion, and come on, bring it on. Let's have it.
Every author should strive to get on a banned book list at least once.
Yeah.
Yes. Seed, not out yet. And I have to say, in terms of waiting for cover design, I always both anxiously await it and dread it, because I've gotten back covers where I am no longer allowed to talk to my cover design team. I have to go through an intermediary because I've made them cry.
Dear. Well, I'm fortunate that my publisher came up with a phenomenal cover for 10th City that tells a story instantly, and I think it really draws you into the book, so I'm really happy with it.
Do you feel like your publisher will do the same for Seed?
Well, it's a different publisher, right? So I hope so. There you go. 5 books, 5 publishers, So
you are so much fun, and I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank everyone for watching, and for everyone who's watching, don't forget to check out amywriteslive.com. Check out all of her publishers. Check out
Amy Writes at live.com. Right.
At live. Do it again. Yeah. Do it again. Give us it again, because I just messed up a bunch of people.
That's okay. Amy Writes at live. No, no, sorry. We're both doing it wrong. AmyWrites.live. That is the website. AmyWrites.live. That's my website. Is the website,
and they can find all the publishers there.
Yes.
And so check out all of those. Follow Drinking with Authors. Look up Four Horsemen, who sponsors this, Four Horsemen Publications, who sponsors this podcast. I almost said broadcast. I need more to drink. But I want to thank everybody who's watched. I want to thank you, especially for being on the show. And before we leave, one last question I always ask: what advice do you give to new writers who want to write a story, a book?
Don't rush. Don't rush to finish. Don't rush to publish. Work slowly, revise, rewrite, make it the best it can be. Find a trusted editor to help you make it the best it can be long before you think about all the glory that comes afterwards. Don't rush.
Your don't did not go in the same direction as my don't, because my advice is always just don't do it. Because I have to judge their reaction. If they get really discouraged, they're going to get more discouraged as the situation goes on. But if they laugh, then you know, aha, they have it in them. But I thank you for that advice. And until next time, it costs nothing to be kind. I love you.
Thank you for listening to Drinking with Authors. Join us next time for another fun conversation with an author over drinks.